Aussie, 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 oi, 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 what the hell did we just witness? Sure, a week after I released the video on what was the craziest Australian Grand Prix of all time, 2023 had to rear its head and make my work completely redundant. Records were broken this weekend, as were the will of some fans, as the stewards proved once again to be as lost as Wesley Snipes in an IRS building, and potentially, the relationships of some of the drivers have started to strain this weekend. I couldn't just not produce a video on this race, and hey, supply and demand, and you know how that goes. Very impromptu, but the people will get what the people want. So let's have a look back and see why the 2023 Australian Grand Prix was completely ridiculous. So, the setting. Melbourne. As has been the case since 1996 for the Aussie Grand Prix. A lot of the time, not the greatest circuit for racing, but as we saw in 2002, give a Williams driver the power of flight and he'll turn the race on its head. And with the recent changes made to the circuit, it could throw something up. Heading into this weekend, Pirelli brought along the C2, C3 and C4 compound tyres, and there would be a fourth DRS zone added to the circuit, because as we know, 3 DRS zones, it's just not enough. In theory, more overtaking opportunities for the drivers, thus closer racing, subsequently more excitement, conversely world peace. Of course, all this is great in theory, but anyone optimistic about this event would be quickly put down by the fact that Max Verstappen was in top form and in the top car, and that is a virtually unbeatable combo. But hey, worth a shot. Anything can happen, and the Formula 2 and Formula 3 races that weekend proved just that. Come Saturday qualifying, anyone wishing for the Red Bulls to be anywhere but the front row of the grid got a small glimmer of hope when Sergio Perez threw his car off into the sandbox. He blamed his little adventure on a mechanical problem, a theory proven right when Red Bull mechanics found that pixies had nibbled away at his front right brake line. All eyes turned to Ferrari and Aston Martin to prove what they could do. The Ferraris were just not on it that day, but the Lord of the Eyebrows in the Aston Martin was continuing his form and got awfully close to the top of the timing sheets. I'll say it again, it is so damn good to see Fernando Alonso in a good car again. But his time in Q3, however good it was only good enough for 4th place, because the Mercedes, with their supposedly irreparably broken tractor of a car, ramped up the pace with George Russell and Sir Lewis Hamilton to beat Alonso. Russell, in fact, was one of only 2 drivers in the field to break into the 1:16s, a remarkable lap. But the other 1:16 driver was ahead of him. Of course, it was Max Verstappen, setting a lap time of 1:16.732, and immediately we all thought, crap, here we go. He's gonna walk this again, ain't he? But as we know, anything can happen in Formula 1, and it usually does. Like, say, for example, George Russell jumping Verstappen off the line and screaming through to take the lead. He must have been perplexed by the gall of Jude Law's clone overtaking him in a lesser car, because down into turn 3, Verstappen braked early and allowed Sir Lewis Hamilton to take 2nd place. It was a Mercedes 1-2 in a year where any degree of silverware would be as monumental a shock as the New York Knicks not blowing a comfortable lead. This was heaven to them, and it sure as hell was a better place than where Ferrari was at, as my pick for the 2023 world champion decided to throw himself into the gravel and catch an early plane trip back to his Monegasque penthouse, leaving the fate of Ferrari with Mr. Smooth Operator himself, Carlos Sainz. The nation of Italy was nervous, as if they were facing a group of North Macedonians. Thanks to Charles Leclerc's trip to the beach, the safety car was brought out, and it wouldn't be the last time we see this thing throughout the day. Burn Mine Landed led the pack around for a little bit before releasing the pack for racing on lap 4. That's when we all asked ourselves the same question: how long until Max passes these guys? Because the RB19 is ridiculously fast, and Max is a dude who believes that anything other than victory would be an insult to him, his family, and the entire nation of Holland. What perhaps we all wanted was that he and Lewis not try to kill each other, like they have done previously, whenever they attempted to run side by side for a sustained length of time. I mean, hey, even in this race, there were already problems, with Max claiming he was forced wide, which he really wasn't. It was all immaterial though, because him repassing for position, it seemed inevitable. But before he had a chance to scythe through the Mercs, Alex Albon threw his Williams into the wall after a brilliant run inside the top 10. All of that kicked up a heap of gravel and dust. A nearby marshal wiped his eyes with a red flag, and the race was subsequently stopped. The first red flag of the day, but not before George Russell had come in to take a pit stop, and due to the rules being as stupid as they are, allowed a free pit stop for everyone else under a red flag. This meant that Jorge Russell who was once leading but now down in P7, was absolutely monumentally screwed. It also meant that Lewis would be without a wingman at the restart, which meant that he also was absolutely monumentally screwed. He tried backing the pack up on the restart to cool down Max's tyres, but in the process, the concertina almost resulted in another plane crash. Start number 2, and Lewis retains the lead. Fernando tries to take second into turn 1. No chance, says Max, who kept his position. That was the way to keep your spot. Down the pack, Nick de Vlies's attempt to defend position saw him bounce into the air. A good method of saving tyre life, but a not so good method of actually trying to stay in the race or keeping your spine intact. A couple laps later, the DRS was enabled and bye-bye. As good as Sir Lewis Hamilton is, that Max RB19 combo would leave anyone helpless. The battle therefore now lay between Hamilton and Alonso. Tasty. Down the pack meanwhile, Carlos Sainz was gaining, Checo was marching through the field, and George Russell was a man on a mission, mowing down everyone ahead of him in his pursuit for retribution. Although this was soon curtailed when he accidentally engaged the rear-mounted flamethrower on lap 18. He was out of the race, and for a long time thereafter, not a hell of a lot happened. There was some good racing, but up the front, it remained fairly stagnant. McLaren was somehow keeping their points hopes alive, with Lando Norris extracting every little bit he could possibly find. Pierre Gasly was hanging on to Sainz's coattails in 5th, and Verstappen threw himself off the road with 9 laps to go. Wait, hang on. He went off? The gap cut down by 5 seconds? Maybe there's a chance here. Nah. No chance. He just extended the gap back out to what it was before. He was just toying with them. There really was no chance for the pack to catch up to him, not unless there was another safety car. And all those that prayed for one got their wish when Kevin Magnussen took an optimistic line through turn 1, slammed into the barrier, and tore his right rear wheel off. It was left stranded halfway down the straight, which brought out the safety car with 4 laps to go. And then they threw the red flag. No one in the pack could quite believe it. Do we really need another red flag? I suppose the argument was to clean up the track properly and to finish the race under green flag conditions, which I'm all for, provided it doesn't result in unmitigated chaos and destruction, as well as fans getting hit by debris, although that happened earlier when K-Mag hit the wall. Luckily, however, Boy lived to tell the tale. Red flags typically constitute a standing restart, but seeing as how there were only a couple laps to go, and there were 16 dudes all fighting for eternal glory, it would be a miracle if whoa. Is Max too far forward in his grid slot there? No, surely that's a penalty right there. Well, according to the sporting regulations, no. He was not in breach of rules. For better explanation as to why exactly that was, check out my Amy's video on this. It's worth checking out. This dude is on the Mount Rushmore of F1 YouTube, and his videos are prettier than mine. Start number 3. Max finally gets his tyres up to temperature properly this time, and gets the jump on Hamilton. But with 2 laps to go, all bets are off. Max may be fast, but Sir Lewis and Fernando are behind him. 2 ultra mega talented drivers who know how to win, especially when given incentive. They barrel into turn 1 and chaos. What? Carlos Sainz's ambitious braking into turn 1 resulted in him punting his hero off and out of the points. Further up the road, Pierre Gasly strayed wide, and when he came back onto the track, drifted into the path of his teammate and spared both the Alpines into the barrier. I mean, I did forecast a French civil war in that team, but I didn't figure this would be the starting point of Le Perfect Storm. Checo went for some lawn mowing, Stroll went off in sympathy, Logan Sargent rammed into the back of de Vlies, which provoked this momentous reaction from a nearby marshal. You see, this is what happens when you let children play with matches soaked in petrol. As a result, the red flag came out, thus making this the first Formula 1 race to be red flagged 3 times. With the order kept like this, it would have been disaster for Aston Martin. But for Haas, they were licking their lips, because Sainz would get a 5-second penalty for his turn 1 tango with Alonso, and that was bound to throw him down the order, and would consequently mean the first podium for the Haas Formula 1 team, and for Nico Hülkenberg. Perhaps now the curse had lifted. Maybe? Nah. That was never gonna happen. Because the second sector wasn't reached in time before the red flag had come out, the order went back to what it was at the start. This time, however, there would be no standing restart. Completely inconsistent ruling, but at this stage, they were on the last lap and we all just wanted to go home. Max crossed the line to win, with Hamilton 2nd and Alonso in 3rd. Sainz crossed the line 4th, but would be classified in P12 after his 5-second penalty demolished his race and his very character, calling it a disgrace, a travesty, an insult to his family, and a tragedy worthy of Shakespeare. there. And to be fair, Gazza didn't get a penalty for his crash, Sargent wasn't punished for his one either. But I suppose that expecting consistency from the powers that be is a tad unreasonable, isn't it? This moved Sir Lancelot up into 4th place, and gave Aston Martin their best combined results ever, despite both drivers doing the rallycross with 2 laps remaining. McLaren got double points, despite their mess of a car, with Oscar Piastri getting his first points on home turf. From the pit lane, Checo finished in P5. Yuki Tsunoda drove a brilliant race to take 10th position in that rubbish AlphaTauri. Nico Hülkenberg salvaged some good points, despite his engine remembering it was Italian within sight of the finishing line. And Alpine initiated damage control to make sure that Pierre Gasly would not be banned for the next round, with Ocon and Gasly sharing the blame for the accident. At least, publicly they were. That whole time, Ocon was formulating a plan of how to burn Gasly's car before it reaches Baku. Oh yeah, there was something else too. Before the race was done, some of Australia's finest attempted to invade the track whilst cars were still mobile on it. The possibility of being put through a 200-mile-an-hour cheese grater did not deter them, and Haas, in a state of dejection, protested the results, knowing full well that any possibility of a podium needed to be jumped at. But obviously, nothing's gonna come of this. So, was this the craziest Australian Grand Prix of all time? Did this dethrone 2002? Well, in my opinion, jury's still out. Can't deny that race though, it's kept everyone talking, and that's a good thing.